Hi, I'm Sylvia Tate. Welcome to my video. Today I want to talk about why being hard on yourself is keeping you stuck. Have you ever noticed how you speak to yourself after having a bad day? You plan to eat well and then you have 2 or 3 biscuits. You skip the workout. You ate more than intended. And then suddenly a voice in your head appears. What's wrong with you? I've done it again. You failed again. You have no willpower. You will never change. Sounds familiar? If so, you're not alone. In fact, I hear versions of this from women all the time. And here is what I find quite fascinating. Most women believe that being hard on themselves is actually helping them. They think self-criticism is making them accountable. They think that guilt keeps them motivated. The stricter they are with themselves, if they're not more strict with themselves, they completely let go. But what if the opposite is true? What if being hard on yourself is the one thing that keeps you stuck? Because after years of coaching women around the weight loss, confidence, and making a sustainable change, I've noticed something. Shame doesn't create a lasting change. Understanding does. And let's talk today about why. Most women are trapped in the cycle. They don't even realize they're running. It starts with behavior. Maybe you overeat, maybe you eat emotionally, maybe you skip your workout. Then immediately comes the guilt. You feel disappointed, frustrated, stressed out, ashamed. You start making promises. Tomorrow it will be different. I will no treat this week. I will make up for it. And for a few days, it may work. You tighten the rules, you push harder, you're becoming more restrictive. Until eventually life happens, stress happens, fatigue happens, a bad day happens. But because your plan was built on the punishment rather than understanding, you do it again. Then the guilt returns. And then the cycle starts all over. You overeat, you feel guilty, promises to be stricter, you fail again, you repeat. Most women have been running this cycle for years, decades even. And the sad part is that the answer is not even more discipline. Imagine if a friend came to you and said, I had a difficult day. I overate. I ate really badly. Would you say, you are hopeless, you've ruined everything, you'll never lose weight? Of course not. You'll probably say, don't worry, it's just one day, life happens, be kind to yourself, let's figure out what's happened. So why do we speak to ourselves in a way that we'd never speak to somebody we love? Here is the problem with shame. Shame doesn't inspire action. It drains energy. It wants to make people to hide. It makes people seek comfort. And what do women use for comfort? Food. So ironically, the thing you are using to motivate yourself is over creating the very opposite behavior you are trying to stop. The more ashamed you feel, the more likely you are to seek relief. The more relief you seek, the more likely you are to overeat. The more you overeat, the more ashamed you feel. Can you see the trap? So now let's be clear. I'm not saying you should make excuses, because there is a big difference between self-compassion and self-excuses. Self-excuses say, for example, it doesn't matter, I'll never change, this is just who I am. Self-compassion says, I'm human. Let's see what has triggered this. Let's understand it. One approach keeps you stuck. The other approach lets you grow. Think about how children are learning to walk. Imagine every time a child fell over, an adult stood over them and shouted, you're terrible at this, give up, you'll never walk. It sounds ridiculous, right? Yet this is how many adults approach change. Every mistake becomes evidence of a failure instead of the evidence of learning. And the women who create lasting change aren't necessarily more disciplined, they are more curious. When something goes wrong, they ask, what happened? How was I feeling? What need was I trying to fulfill in that moment? What can I learn from this? Because curiosity creates awareness, and awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is moving from judgment to observation. So instead of saying, I felt, try saying, interesting. I wonder what happened there. Instead of, I have no willpower, try, what made that choice, what made that day to be so difficult today? Instead of, I've ruined everything, try, what is the next best choice I can make? These small shifts change everything. Because lasting weight loss isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming somebody who can recover quickly. Someone who doesn't turn one biscuit into a whole weekend. Someone who missed the workout doesn't miss the workout for a whole month. One difficult day doesn't have to be a reason to quit. And here is I wish every woman knew. You cannot hate yourself into somebody you love. You cannot shame yourself into lasting confidence. You cannot punish yourself into peace. Real change grows in a different environment. It grows in the environment of awareness and honesty, understanding and compassion. So the next time you make a mistake, and you will because you're human, pause. Ask and notice the voice in your head. Would I speak, and ask yourself, would I speak this way to somebody I love? If the answer is no, change the conversation immediately. Because the relationship you have with yourself is what really matters. And often the fastest way forward isn't becoming harder on yourself, it's becoming kinder. So if this resonated with you, I'd love to know. What is one thing you say to yourself you'd never say to a friend? Share it please in the comments. And if you're ready to stop fighting yourself and move into understanding yourself, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for listening.